Steven Seagal was once one of the biggest action stars on the planet, a martial arts master turned Hollywood icon who exploded onto the scene with brutal fight scenes, stoic one-liners, and a ponytail that meant business. He wasn't just acting tough, he claimed to be tough. Fluent in Japanese, an Aikido expert, and surrounded by an air of mystery, Seagal brought something different to American action films. But behind the high kicks and Hollywood paychecks was a man shrouded in controversy. Today, many don't ask if he's a legend. They ask if he's a fraud or worse, a villain. How did this martial arts guru go from training Japanese police to starring in blockbuster hits, only to crash so hard he ended up filming straight-to-DVD movies and taking political asylum in Russia? Was it his massive ego, the constant behind-the-scenes chaos, the lawsuits and assault allegations, or did Hollywood simply outgrow him? This is the story of Steven Seagal, his unbelievable rise, the shocking moments that sabotaged his career, and the legacy he's left behind. What really happened behind the scenes? And is the man we once saw as an action hero actually one of Hollywood's biggest cautionary tales? Let's pull back the curtain and reveal the truth. Before the fame, the films, and the fame-induced chaos, Steven Seagal was just another foreigner living in Japan with a passion for martial arts. He wasn't just dabbling. He was the first non-Japanese man to open an Aikido dojo in Japan, a rare feat that earned him serious credibility in martial arts circles. Seagal wasn't playing a role at this stage. He was the real deal. He spent years mastering his craft, and even trained Japanese police officers in combat techniques. Eventually, he returned to the U.S. and began working in Hollywood not as an actor, but as a martial arts choreographer, lending his expertise to films like The Challenge 1982 and Never Say Never Again 1983, the James Bond flick. His break into acting wasn't typical. He didn't audition his way to stardom. Instead, it was thanks to Hollywood power agent Michael Ovitz, who took a liking to Seagal and used his influence to land him a lead role, despite having no acting experience. That gamble became above the law in 1988, and it changed everything. Seagal's journey from dojo owner to screen star was as swift as one of his Aikido throws, and just as forceful. Above the Law in 1988 wasn't just a modest debut. It was a surprise hit that turned heads across Hollywood. Audiences were drawn to Seagal's calm, brutal efficiency. He wasn't flashy like Van Damme or wisecracking like Schwarzenegger. He was quiet, intimidating, and felt dangerous. That mystique set him apart, and it worked big time. Seagal quickly followed up with a trio of action films that solidified his image: Hard to Kill 1990, Marked for Death 1990, and Out for Justice 1991. These weren't just movies. They were one-man wrecking crew fantasies, each starring Seagal as the ultimate street-smart enforcer dishing out justice with snapping wrists and bone-breaking moves. What helped him stand out was his unique fighting style. Aikido wasn't common in action cinema. It was smooth, fluid, and felt lethal, combined with his mysterious background and commanding screen presence. Seagal quickly became one of the most bankable action stars of the early 90s. By 1991, he was mentioned in the same breath as Jean-Claude Van Damme, and even beginning to rival Stallone and Schwarzenegger. The man who once ran a dojo in Japan was now running Hollywood's action scene, but the peak was still to come. In 1992, Steven Seagal reached the absolute peak of his fame, and it came in the form of Under Siege. Warner Brothers took a $5 million gamble by casting him as Casey Ryback, a Navy SEAL turncook who takes on a group of terrorists hijacking a U.S. Navy battleship. The result? A global box office smash, grossing $157 million worldwide, and finally earning Seagal something he'd never had before: critical praise. This wasn't just another low-budget action flick. Under Siege had scale, ambition, and serious talent behind it. With Tommy Lee Jones and Gary Busey playing eccentric villains, the film became a standout hit in a sea of mindless action movies. Some critics even called it a thinking man's Die Hard, elevating Seagal to legitimate action star royalty. The impact was so big, it forced changes to the original script of Die Hard 3, which had too many plot similarities. That's how powerful Seagal's success had become. Flush with fame and leverage, Seagal began demanding more creative control, not just over fight choreography, but over scripts, casting, and direction. And while that confidence felt earned, it was the beginning of a career-altering shift, and not for the better. After the massive success of Under Siege, Steven Seagal wanted more than just star power. He wanted to be a filmmaker. And in 1994, he got his chance with On Deadly Ground, his directorial debut. It was supposed to be his passion project, part action movie, part environmental message. But it turned into a legendary disaster. The film went massively over budget, ballooning to around $50 million. And what came out of it was a muddled, preachy mess. Seagal played a firefighting oil worker turned eco-warrior, and while the explosions were loud, the plot was ridiculous. He closed the film with a long, awkward monologue about pollution, Not exactly what action fans came for. Critics shredded it. The film earned multiple Razzie nominations, and audiences weren't impressed either. It flopped at the box office and became a Hollywood punchline. But worse than the numbers was the signal it sent. Seagal, now drunk on power, was becoming impossible to work with. Instead of cementing his status as a serious filmmaker, On Deadly Ground exposed his ego and poor creative instincts. It was the beginning of the fall, and the first time the world saw Seagal fail. Riding the lingering success of Under Siege, Warner Brothers greenlit a sequel, Under Siege 2, Dark Territory, 1995. But this time, things were different. Seagal's ego had inflated, and behind the scenes, it showed. Reports surfaced of him rewriting scripts, clashing with producers, and ignoring direction. He even insisted on environmental subplots, even though the film was set on a train with terrorists and missiles. Despite grossing $105 million globally, the movie wasn't a true success. High production costs, Seagal's inflated salary, and growing behind-the-scenes tension made it a headache for the studio. And it wasn't just about money. There were serious allegations against Seagal, including harassment and abusive on-set behavior, that began surfacing more frequently around this time. The downward momentum only accelerated when he was cast in Executive Decision 1996. Initially, Seagal was supposed to be a co-lead, but after more clashes with producers and bad press, the studio pulled a bold move. They killed off his character early and removed him from most of the marketing. The audience were shocked. Hollywood is brutal to those who don't adapt, and Seagal, unlike his peers, refused to evolve. While others found new life in humor, reinvention, or supporting roles, he dug at his heels, and the industry slowly turned its back on him. In 2001, Steven Seagal looked like he might be staging a legitimate comeback. Exit Wounds, co-starring rapper DMX, was a surprise box office hit. It had energy, a gritty style, and an early 2000s hip-hop aesthetic that resonated with younger viewers. For a brief moment, Seagal seemed to be back, adapting to new trends, surrounding himself with fresh talent, and showing flashes of the intensity that once made him famous. But just as quickly as the comeback arrived, it vanished without a trace. Seagal followed Exit Wounds with Half Past Dead 2002, a film so formulaic and out of touch that it instantly killed his momentum. The same wooden acting, the same over-choreographed fights, the same bloated ego behind the scenes. This time, audiences weren't buying it literally. The film flopped hard, critically and commercially. What hurt most was Seagal's complete refusal to evolve. While Stallone leaned into his age and found emotional depth, and Schwarzenegger embraced humor and self-awareness, Seagal didn't either. He refused to slim down, refused to adjust his image, and refused to listen. The comeback that could have redefined his career became a final confirmation. Hollywood had moved on, and Seagal wasn't coming back. By the mid-2000s, Steven Seagal was no longer a theatrical draw. He was a straight-to-DVD regular. His films were pumped out at lightning speed, often with budgets under $10 million, and titles like Today You Die, Flight of Fury, and Kill Switch became indistinguishable. The formula was always the same. Seagal played a mysterious ex-agent or vigilante, barely moved in fight scenes, and was frequently dubbed over by voice actors in post-production. Yes, dubbed. Seagal's reputation had become so toxic, and his work ethic so unreliable, that producers sometimes hired other people to finish his dialogue and editing. The quality was so poor that fans began joking his movies were becoming a genre of their own, one defined by bare minimum effort. There was one brief return to mainstream visibility, his role in Robert Rodriguez's Machete, 2010, where he played a villain and died on screen, a first. He also starred in the reality TV series Steven Seagal, Lawman, 2009 to 2014, where he worked as a sheriff's deputy in Louisiana. It was bizarre, but undeniably fascinating. Still, none of this restored his film career. Seagal had fully transitioned from icon to curiosity, a shadow of the star he once was. Today, Steven Seagal is less known for his films and more for his bizarre public image. In recent years, he's become a political curiosity, moving to Russia, accepting citizenship from Vladimir Putin, and being appointed a so-called special representative between the U.S. and Russia. It's a dramatic turn for someone who once embodied the American action hero. His public appearances now often go viral for all the wrong reasons. Slow, awkward martial arts demonstrations, strange interviews, and comments that range from delusional to downright offensive.